what we see here, it's an impression, and it's an addition silicon. There are 3 consistencies, probably you already see. This region, it's a putty, the dark blue. You can see the fluid, which is whitish, and the light blue is actually a heavy body. So this is 3 consistency silicon. That was the way the impression was made. What interests us here are those 2 abutments, actually the impression of 2 abutments. You see the delineation quite clearly. There was no retraction cord in there, but nevertheless the silicon is very good and reproduces the details. And for those 2 abutments we will do Geller model, which is a model with an alveolar socket to fix the abutment, the die. Sorry for the image and for the way we did it, because it was done during the pandemic, so we didn't have the possibilities of a normal laboratory. But you see, we used some blockings. That's regular plastiline, and we blocked actually the place. So now we will be able to pour plaster. But not in the rest of the impression, just in those 2 abutments. So once we did that, you see, we trim the plaster that we have poured, and to make it look like some sort of a root. Yeah. And then once we do that, we will place them back and pour the rest of the plaster. We're gonna see. So now we see them placed back. As you can see, we did some initial trimming, and then we'll do a little bit more, rounder, of course. So those are the initial castings again. And then we get to this. So the rounding of what is to be the root, and what is red is another plastiline that we added in order to find easily, in the second time, to find easily the abutments. We will see it in the details afterwards. To find it in the main model that we will pour now. Of course, now we have to isolate those 2 roots, so to say, or initial castings. You see, all those pores that were in the plaster had to be filled. You see the little details there, reddish details. We filled it with plastiline. Normally we do it with wax, but so nothing has to be retentive, and it has to be isolated, from the rest of the model that we will pour in the impression. And you can easily imagine that the plaster that we're going to pour now should not get into retentivities, into undercuts, should not fix or stick or adhere to the first castings that we see in the picture. Actually, what we have here, it's an extractable plaster tooth. That's it, right? So we did the corrections where necessary, and we isolated. That was crazy at that time, olive oil, yeah, because we didn't have other possibility. But it's crazy how well it does the isolation. Yes, it doesn't have to be a lot. So now it's very important to put those things back into the impression. This is kind of difficult. You have to be extremely precise. Yeah, we place them also with a little bit of olive oil just to create some vacuum in there, to prevent those two abutments from moving into the impression. Right. If the abutments prepared in the mouth were shorter, that's a little bit difficult because they can slightly move. So you have to be very careful when you place this back into their respective places in the impression. This type of model is usually done for aesthetic restorations in the frontal zone because we need to keep the gum in place. So it's very important for them to be fixed when we will pour the plaster in the rest of the model. So you can see those abutments were prepared, you see, in detail till the margin of the preparation. So this is probably the part that takes most of time, to trim them precisely at the margin of the preparation. Of course, it's done under magnification. And so now we're ready to pour the model. That's the poured model. And you see the plaster is kind of curious in color. We added a little bit red pigment. You see the initial abutments are yellower, and the rest of the model, the alveolar model itself is a little bit reddish. It was just for didactic purposes, to explain things, to make it clear. So now we can make the difference. If you look at that, they seem one thing if they were not differently colored. Now you see we trimmed, and then we found the plastiline, and now we can push, you see, from each side we can push the abutments, the dies now, because we call them abutments when they're in the mouth and dies when they are in plaster. We can push the dies out. You see the margin is very clearly seen, as you can notice. You see the margin is very clearly seen there. The gum is there, and only the difference of color can tell you which is which or who is who. Right? This is a real case. It's not. This was done for a real patient. So you see this abutment here. That's the margin of the prep. It's a shoulder, a deep shoulder prep, and if we push it, you see it simply comes up. And we lifted it. So this is very important to notice that it is removable and that the margin has been determined very exactly before. So what remains is the abutments. You saw those porosities that were filled, and inside we see the alveoli itself. That's why it's called alveolar model. Geller, Willy Geller invented it. It's a famous ceramist, one of the best in the world. And you see there are some notches there to allow for a precise repositioning of the abutment. You see again the notch. The notch was done simply by creating a drill on the die. So the plaster now copied that. You see this milling, this preparation. So once you poured the plaster, this caused the appearance of that notch that we saw on the alveola. So now this prevents the two from moving relatively to each other, right? So when you place it there, it stays really in place. The position is extremely sure and unique. And you imagine that we isolated with olive oil. That was wonderful. So this is the alveola again. There was a little bit of a chipping there. You see the mouse pointer, but this is not so much important because the margin of our preparation is on the abutment, right? On the die. So the precision is of repositioning is very good. Of course, with such a model, you wouldn't think of doing a bridge. It's mainly for single crowns or veneers or single teeth not for bridges. But the advantage is that it is removable, as we saw, and then when you place it back, you see it is very, very precise, and you can read the details very well. So again, we don't do bridges in such models, using such models, because we still have some doubts when we reposition everything, and the contact points and everything. We try to be more careful. So if you have a Zeiser model, then this is precise. We know it. We tested it and we measured it, and so it's okay. The Baumann and the Accutrack and the Pindex are also precise, but Zeiser is the most precise. But the advantage of the Geller model is that you see you keep the gum around the tooth. So you can do the emergence profile way better because you already have the gum there. You don't lose it while ditching there around. You see the gum is very clearly seen, and the interdental gum and everything stays in place. The papillas are there. You can read everything very well.